President of the Bundestag, President of the Bundesrat, the upper and lower houses of Parliament, colleagues from the state assemblies, Excellencies, Bishop Dröge, Mr. Jeutner, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank these young people very much for the words here in the chapel where it used to be the Church of Reconciliation. Your words are food for thought. This is also true from the young people we heard from the Visegrad states earlier. They remind us of what happened here, but first and foremost, and this came across in the speeches of each and every one of them, what it means for the future and what we must take to heart and do for the future. Since 1960, when the Berlin Wall was built, the Church of Reconciliation was in the border strip. Neither East Berliners nor West Berliners could visit it, and in 1985 it was demolished, and this was so wrong because the individual citizens were targeted, and yet they were only seeking liberty. By demolishing the Church of Reconciliation, we saw how the dictatorship of East Germany could not be reconciled with the individual needs of its citizens for liberty. Too many people were victims of the East German regime, and we have not forgotten these people. I remember those who were killed at this Berlin Wall because they were seeking liberty. I remember the 75,000 people who were arrested and imprisoned because they were fleeing East Germany. I remember all of those who suffered repression because their family members had fled. I remember those who were under surveillance, who were denunciated, those who were oppressed. Their dreams and hopes were killed because they did not want to subject themselves to state arbitrariness. The 9th of November is a terrible day for German history. On this day, we also remember the victims of the Nazis, of the pogroms of the 9th of November 1938. We remember from the 9th to the 10th of November 1938 the crimes that were committed against Jews in Germany, and the result of this was the Shoah. The 9th of November, in which both the most awful and the most wonderful moments of our history took place, remind us that hatred, racism, and anti-Semitism must be stopped wherever we encounter them. It admonishes us this day to do all we can to protect human dignity, the rule of law, freedom, because 30 years ago, on this date, the Berlin Wall opened and then fell. Just before that, no one would have believed it even possible. At the start of 1989, it was a small minority fighting for civil rights and democracy, suffering discrimination, persecution, and incarceration as a result. But this minority managed to encourage thousands and hundreds of thousands in autumn of 1989 who took to the streets to protest. Others went via Hungary, Prague, or Warsaw and turned their backs on East Germany. All of them contributed to bringing down the Berlin Wall, opening the way to democracy in our country, and all of them are due our gratitude. The peaceful revolution was inspired by Solidarność, which led to democratic successes in the Czech Republic. The Charter 77 encouraged this in the Baltic states. The longest human chain in history pushed for independence, and in Hungary, the Iron Curtain was made permeable. The call for freedom created new democracies in Eastern Europe and Central Europe. Germany and Europe could finally grow back together. But the values on which Europe is built, freedom, democracy, equality, and the rule of law, preservation of human rights, they are anything but something we can take for granted. Again and again, we must live them, we must defend them. And in the future, too, Europe must fight for human rights and tolerance, for freedom and democracy, and this in times of sweeping technological and global changes. This is more pressing than ever before. The contribution of the individual may sometimes seem small, but we mustn't become discouraged because of this. Instead, we must remember Václav Havel's words, who said that freedom is like the sea. He said, the individual waves may not seem to do much, but the power of the tide is impossible to resist. The Berlin Wall is now relegated to the annals of history. And now we want to ensure that no wall separates people again. It proves to us that no wall is so high and so strong that we cannot break it. Reinhard Kunze spoke in a poem about the wall. He said, when we created the wall, we couldn't imagine how high it was inside us. We got used to its horizons. We got used to its wind shadow, and in its wind shadow, we cast no shadows. Now we stand naked of any excuse, and this is true for all of us in the East and in the West. We are naked of any excuse, and it is down to us to do what we can for freedom and democracy. Thank you.